Growing up and going to school, we learn a lot. From science, history, art, and even music. We are really just beginning to understand the world around us. But at times, we can be tested over things that we weren't taught about in school. But just because those answers aren't simply in the back of a book, doesn't mean give up. Because there is help. This is Youth to Youth, Stories of Help and Hope. According to the national statistics by the U.S. Department of Justice, 1 out of 3 girls and 1 out of 5 boys will become victims of sexual abuse by the time they reach their 18th birthday. There have been up to 80,000 cases reported a year, but the number of unreported cases is far greater. Meet Cari. She is a musician. She's a leader. And has a personality that captivates those around her. Cari is easily an all-around American sweetheart and a young woman that any parent would be proud to call their own. But the road to becoming this mature young woman was not an easy journey.
When I was 11, my father sexually abused me for 3 months, and it actually started in May at the end of 6th grade year, going into 7th grade, and it lasted, for 3 months. July is my birthday, so I turned 12.
Many people think that sexual abuse happens by complete strangers, but 85 to 90% of all sexual abusers are actually a trusted family member or a close friend.
When I look back, I can see some warning signs, but as I was going through it, I couldn't. I had just gotten a new job and I was going through the 90 days and it was pretty grueling. So that's where my attention was. And he's very charismatic, very conning, very smooth, and everybody loved him. You'd never think that he would do something like that.
Victims of sexual abuse are often too afraid to tell others. Fear that the news will hurt their family and fear of not being believed influence this silence. But in many cases, the victim is threatened by the abuser to remain silent.
As a child, I was always grown up to know that family is really important, and my family's really close, and I just didn't want to be the cause of breaking up the family by this huge secret that I kept. So my main focus was keeping everybody else happy at the cost of losing myself.
Psychological damage during and after the abuse can be severe, and like many other victims of sexual abuse, Cari began contemplating suicide.
I just felt like there was no way out at all. And like I said before, I wasn't thinking about myself, I was thinking about everybody else, and I didn't want anybody to get hurt by this. And so I knew I was just feeling so much hurt, and I felt trapped, like my dad was just putting me in this position where there was no way out, and I couldn't tell anyone, and all these feelings were just inside and there was no way to release them. And the abuse started off where it happened every Saturday morning, and then it moved to every day, and by the time it got to that every day, I was just ready to end it. I couldn't handle it anymore.
But Cari eventually broke free from her fears, and on a Sunday afternoon, she told her mother in front of her father.
At that point, I was suicidal, and I just felt like giving up. But I was so angry at him, I chose him instead of me.
The first thing that went through my mind was, she's telling the truth and you have to believe her. And I could see myself in a chair in a room with just walls. No electrical outlets, no doors, no windows. And I sat in the chair and I just slumped down in the chair.
Cari's father was arrested and is now serving a 20-year sentence in prison. But even after the truth was out and the abuse was over, Cari still experienced post-traumatic stress.
All of a sudden I was awakened by her screaming. I mean, it awakened me out of my sleep. It was horrible. And I ran to her room and she was awake. And I said, "Cari," and she couldn't see me. She was looking right through me. She could not see me. And I started to shake her, "Cari, Cari," and nothing.
Following the abuse, Cari received help from a therapist and also got help from community service organizations.
I get help from Safe Connections, that's where I go now, and Kids Under 21, when I became a volunteer there as a crisis worker, that really helped me. And then just therapy, when it first happened, really helped a lot.
Well, Kids Under 21 is a youth-focused organization, and our mission is to prevent teen suicide and foster the emotional well-being of youth. We go to health fairs, we go to schools, organizations, talking to people, educating them about mental health and emotional wellness topics, and also about the prevention of teen suicide. And then for intervention, we have the crisis line. We have the only teen-staffed crisis line in Missouri. It's a peer-to-peer hotline or helpline where teens can call in and talk to someone their own age about any crisis that they're going through. It's completely free, anonymous, and confidential. And for postvention, we work with family and friends who've lost a loved one to suicide.
When a young person calls the Kids Under 21 hotline, they will also be connected to organizations that can help with specific issues.
Well, anything can throw a person into a crisis, for example, abuse or sexual abuse. And when a person calls KUDO, we have a complete database of resources online, and there's lots of resources for abuse or sexual abuse. For example, there's this organization called Safe Connections, which is a great organization based right here in St. Louis. That organization provides individual and group counseling for people who've experienced a sexual abuse trauma. They also provide a crisis line for people who are struggling with intimate partner violence or sexual abuse.
Safe Connections provides just different services besides counseling. I go through group therapy also, where they just build girls' confidence up. I just finished a group therapy session where we talked about voice and giving yourself a voice. And I created a project all about this abuse, and my voice just evolved through the whole project. And it was very interesting by the end of the group session where my power inside lied.
Today, Cari finds comfort in helping others, and she offers important advice to those who have endured the same abuse.
My advice would be to get help, to go to someone that they know would listen to them and tell them what's going on. And for me, it wasn't necessarily the abuse itself that was the hardest part, but it was how I felt inside about myself. That was hard to deal with, even today. That's one of my greatest challenges. And so if someone who's going through abuse can go and get help, tell them what's going on, and just kind of release all of those feelings inside out, I think that would really, really help.
And advice to parents:
you have to really look at the child, and you have to listen to the child, and you have to hear what they're saying, whether you want to hear it or not. Keep in mind that you don't always have to pay for counseling, so don't ever let that be the one thing that stops you from going. It's very important that you go, even if you don't say anything the first few sessions. Go. You will not be sorry later.